Muslims of Reddit who have renounced Islam and are now atheists or anything else. What happened and why did you do so? My parents, Iranian, told me that they became atheists and moved to New Zealand when their new government made alcohol illegal for some religious reason or something. That was what pushed them over the edge, and partly why I love them so much. Ex-Muslim here. None of it made any sense to me, even as a young girl. I didn't understand what was the big deal about women showing their hair or their arms and why I wasn't allowed to show mine. I didn't see why dating was so forbidden, and the idea of marrying a total stranger made no sense to me. As an Arab, I didn't get why my Pakistani friend had to pray 5 times a day in Arabic, a language he didn't even understand. I didn't get why my friends, who were perfectly decent people, and their parents, who were honestly nicer than my parents, were going to go to heck just because they weren't raised Muslim. I had so many questions, none of which had reasonable answers. Everything came down to because God said so. The older I got, the more research I did and the more I realized it was all just nonsensical bulls. My life as a Muslim was honestly heck. I wasn't allowed to do anything that my non-Muslim friends could do. I couldn't talk to boys. I had to cover my entire body from head to toe. Couldn't go swimming or wear shorts or anything. I couldn't move out for college, etc. The plan for my life was for me to be raised in my father's house, then move to my husband's house, where I'd have even less rights than I did before. According to Islam, I would have to obey my husband. He would be able to hit me. He could divorce me at any time just by uttering the words divorce. He could marry multiple wives without my permission. He would get custody of the kids if we divorced and I remarried. The list goes on and on. And when I died, what would my reward be? Oh yes, I'd get to go to heaven and be one of my husband's many wives and sex slaves. There was nothing for me in this religion. Nothing. Now I happily live alone, have a good job, make good money, wear what I want, date whomever I want, eat whatever I want, and feel incredibly happy. Throwaway account for personal reason. I grew up Pakistan. Both my parents are good Muslims and people in a sense. My father is less involved in religion and more open-minded person, and I love them both. When I was a teenager I became extremely religious. I prayed 5 times a day. I read the Quran. I shamed my sister for not wearing a hijab and not praying. But still my nature never truly changed. I am a naturally cynical person that finds the worst in human beings. For a time I projected that hatred for people to anyone who wasn't a Muslim. I still always had doubts in my mind about faith that I kept to myself. But what truly took my faith was when my 6-year-old brother was kidnapped. We called the police and we searched for him on your own, and they did find him. Days later he had been raped and killed, his body placed in dustbin with the trash. They never found who did it, but after months of mourning I asked Imam why Allah would allow this. The Imam said that the man who did that will be punished one day and that Allah this to us to test our faith. I screamed at him, how is this a test? What kind of God allow this kind of evil to happen? To put it short, I lost faith in any god or metaphysical being, and I lost faith in the rest of humanity. I'm so sorry for your brother. That's horrible, and anyone who says there's any meaning or reasoning behind such a tragedy deserves a kick in the head. Hugs. Born and raised in Saudi Arabia, and lived in California for about 10 years. For most of the years until maybe the last 1 or 2, I had no doubts at all about Islam, and everything was justifiable or had an appropriate interpretation. And then I had friends and co-workers that were very Christian lately, and we engaged in many debates. It was so easy to present them with things that I thought were proofs against their case, but there was always a justifiable reason or an appropriate interpretation. Digging more into the history of Christianity, and early transcripts and all that, I found how heresies form. But after that, I noticed 2 things. The first was that the formation of Islamic thoughts and concepts was very similar to the formation of Christianity. And the second was that I found a few issues that I could easily prove wrong in Christianity, but found that Muhammad himself believed such problematic mistakes, so there is no way that his source was the ultimate knowing. That's in summary what got me to the conclusion that all religions are man-made. I went back to Saudi for some reasons, and now I live normally here and pretend to be a Muslim. Not to the point of praying all the time and that, but just the usual use of Islamic phrases and reasoning. Someone has a problem, tell them hopefully God has a better plan for them and such. but also remind them about verses where it says that you should take actions to fix your problems and not just ask God and wait while doing nothing. It's not comfortable, but oh well, there's no way it'll be safe to go public with this. Although Saudi Twitter is filled with atheists. Stay safe. Being born in Iran and being forced to have Quran studies once a week was not something I'm particularly fond of to this day. Mind you, this is before I moved to Canada, where I was allowed to have a free life. As I grew up, I saw how my government abused women, children, and even men in the name of Allah and used that to justify any wrong and unethical thing they did. My government is literally using religion to control people, and it opened my eyes, where I decided that religion is just a puppet tool used to attempt to control people by giving them the notion of heck and heaven. In the end, I do believe in God, or a force that exists. However, I no longer believe in any religion purely because if the original religion was real, I don't know how many selfish people may have edited it to their own gain. Sorry if I offended anyone, I'm just stating my personal opinion. Not a Muslim myself, but this is about a friend of mine who came to the UK age 19 as a refugee after extremist Muslims killed his parents as he was forced to watch. When he arrived to the UK, he decided to become a Christian and started coming to my church, which is how we met. He quickly became a great part of the community and began to help out at the Christian Union at university. After a session of doing outreach where we offer to polish the shoes, listen to and pray with people in the city center, a group of Muslims must have overheard my friend sharing his story, as we often attract interest from passers-by. A few days later, I got a phone call late at night telling me that my friend was in hospital with multiple stab wounds. He was attacked by a small group of radicalized Muslims who found out that he had converted to Christianity. This happened 4 years ago, so he's totally recovered and still has one of the strongest faiths I've ever seen in a man. I realize that girls should be allowed to show their hair after turning 8 and not have a 40-year-old husband chosen for them at the exact same time. Fellow ex-Muslim here. It's so crazy how ingrained Islam is when you're raised that way, showing your hair like it's an act of immodesty. I was born with this head of hair. It's natural. I can't believe I ever thought it was wrong to not cover my hair. Left home for college at 18, was in an environment where I was no longer surrounded by everything that conformed to my beliefs. I began questioning and exploring new ideas, read books like The Selfish Gene, etc. Then found the RX Muslim subreddit and I agreed with them more and more. The main reason I left was because of the question of our existence and the existence of God. The other negative stuff about Islam treatment of women, etc. followed later. I quit about 6 months into my first year of college. I went from praying 5 times a day to a true atheist. That sounds like my journey from Christianity, only instead of searching out new ideas, I looked inward for my answers. If God lived in my heart, then the answer of his existence would be found in my heart as well. I grew up in a Muslim household. I read the Quran, studied it in school, practiced the religion till I went to college. I fasted in the month of Ramadan, abstained from pork and alcohol, and even felt the obligation to live my life as a good Muslim. And then I fell in love. She was a Catholic girl, went to church, and her family was liberal enough for her to do whatever she wanted. We dated in secret, and her family accepted me as one of her friends. Until they found out we were in love. They declared me persona non grata, and we broke up because they wouldn't accept it. My next love was the same. She was ashamed to introduce me to her family as I wasn't of the same religion. She said her parents just wouldn't understand. 5 years later I met the love of my life. We were family friends. We loved each other, our families loved each other. But they found out we were in love and banned it. They said I was not the right religion. They would never accept me. They'd disown her. It broke our hearts. But we continued in secret. It took a toll on us. We were close to our families. But what could we do? It would never lead to happiness. Only regret and bitterness. We broke up. Friends and family told us, maybe this is God's way. Maybe he has a plan for all of us. No God of mine should stop us from loving someone else. No God of mine would be merciful, or omnipotent, or wise enough to tell me that two people cannot love each other. I'd rather not have God in my life then. So I left. and did what I wanted, and I drank alcohol, ate as much pork as I wanted, and broke everything I learned. And what I found out was that living life as a good person was better than being a good Muslim. So many doors that we closed on ourselves. And what I found out was that living life as a good person was better than being a good Muslim. Ding ding ding. We have a winner. I was brought up Muslim, went to Muslim school, where I had my first kiss lol. And my parents weren't strict, but they were practicing Muslims who made me pray and read Quran and all. When I was young it was all I knew, mostly because everyone I knew was Muslim. Islamic school, and I excelled in Islamic studies and came first in our school Quran reading competitions from grade 1 through to grade 10. This is when I started sort of thinking for myself and questioning things, and I could never really get an answer. My cousins and family friends used to call themselves Muslim, but they drink occasionally, not openly, but we knew, and weren't really that bothered about daily prayers apart from Friday prayers. My parents weren't fully observant Muslims, but this would never happen in my house. As I grew older it was a battle in my mind. Be punished for my actions or stop giving a frick. I was pretty good with girls during school. Islamic school girls are freaks, and I would often do things that weren't permissible in Islam. However, during these times I'd still call myself Muslim, pray, fast, etc. As I grew older, 16 or so, me and my friends all started going to parties and smoking weed and all. Not alcohol though, because we would still call ourselves Muslims, and well, marijuana is technically just a plant, right? We would all experiment more and think less, and I remember the turning point for me was one day when me and some of my friends decided to have some magic mushrooms. Again, under the pretense that it's only that trip seriously changed my life in so many ways, and one of them was religion. I can pinpoint myself abandoning religion to that day. As a university student studying engineering, I also strongly believe in science, logic and reasoning, and the idea of religion just doesn't make sense in the time we live in. Nowadays I drink alcohol with the same friends I went to school with, who are also pretty much agnostics or getting to the point where they will be. I've met people from all walks of life, and I've had experiences that I otherwise couldn't have. I'm also lucky enough to have parents who never pushed religion on me. I'm sure they have an idea that I sometimes smoke and drink, but I'm a good son to them, and that is what's most important to them. With that being said, however, I don't just do things openly when I am at home and have respect for them because they are still Muslim, and I still celebrate Islamic holidays with them and extended family. One thing I just can't do, however, is eat pork lol. But yeah, anyway, no regrets. All you need in life is good friends, love, family, and good food. Man, you seem like such a decent person, haha. I am happy for your transformation. I grew up in a conservative Muslim household. My father became a huge conspiracy theorist after 9/11, blaming everything and everything on the Jews or Zionists. Many of the things other young girls take for granted are things I was forbidden to do, like showing my hair, arms, or knees. Of course, singing, dancing, having non-Muslim friends. If I made a new friend, my father would always ask me which religion she was from, having male friends, and such. As a girl, it was always installed in me that I was a special jewel or a delicate flower who needs to be protected from the big, bad, evil world at all costs, and that my number one purpose in life was to be a wife and mom who waits on her husband hand and foot and who has lots and lots of good Muslim babies. Modesty is the most important thing for girls, even more important than strength or intellect. And don't even get me started on period shame. Sorry guys. Then I went to university and found a means of understanding everything I had gone through. Even back when I was a kid, about 10-12 years old, I would just pretend to do namaz. I would just time my moves. I had thought that I would grow up and then learn the prayers. That never really happened. Like others have already mentioned, my parents, like any other Muslim, have a good support structure. They would talk a lot about religion and whine about non-believers or people from other religion. But I never got along with their Muslim kids. I could never connect with them and religiously pray 5 times every day. You are a freaking kid. Just enjoy your life. Fast forward a few years, when I was in college, I was already despising Islam. That, coupled with a bunch of friends who were already atheists, made me give even fewer fricks about religion. Once I was introduced to alcohol and pork, I never looked back. but I would continue pretending to be a good Muslim around my parents. But the nail in the coffin was when my parents said I couldn't marry my girlfriend of 4 years, a Hindu turned atheist, unless she converted. Of course the girl didn't agree since she would never be able to cope up with the restrictions brought upon by Islam. They forced us to break up. I hate the fact that I won't be able to marry her. I still have sleepless nights thinking about her. My parents don't know I am an atheist, but I've started to argue with them now whenever they ask me to do anything religious and ask them to think critically. I will most likely tell them that I am not going to fast during the coming Ramadan. I've reached this point in my life where I don't think I can pretend anymore. I once had a debate with an atheist. He told me to list all the things that make my faith in Islam strong. I listed a few things. He demolished all the points with proof. That night I didn't sleep. By the morning, I knew I was no longer a believer. I grew up in a conservative family, raised as a religious person. Well, actually forced to. It all started when I go to college in another city. I've met people from all beliefs and disbeliefs during first 2 years. At first it was hard to accept those ideas because you can't really question things about life and religious mentality. They say it's what it is. It's written in the book and so. But every question brings more with itself. It was hard for me to leave religion like that. But I've read and watched a lot of scientific material and religion became less and less serious. And at the very end all religions are the same to me. They have gods, prophets, orders about how to live your life, heck and heaven, in most cases, and so, only names are different. The biggest thing that bugging me is all of those sacred books has very limited information about life. I know it sounds cliche but it's all about managing people and how to control masses. And my atheist non-believer friends are much more kind, thoughtful and better persons overall than religious ones. Last but not least, how can you ban pork, man? That's outrageous. It's all about managing people and how to control masses. This is one of, if not the primary function of religion. A set of guiding principles that means everyone in society has the same understanding of how to behave. But now that we have laws distinct from religion, it's less crucial to society. Throw it because Q4, 89 if they turn their backs take them, and slay them wherever you find them. I read the Quran cover to cover, looked at it objectively and withheld my favorable bias for Mohammed. If I look at the major prophets of most religions, they lived a life of self-denial and sacrifice. If I look the prophet, the man I was supposed to emulate of Islam, I see someone who married and raped a child, ordered the slaughter of men just to take their wives captive as sex slaves, had 11 wives and who promoted violence. Also, I love dogs. Like I want them all up in my bed, under the covers with their wet noses and wiggly bums. Despite what some liberal Muslims say, the Quran and Hadiths make it clear that dogs are to be slaughtered. LOL. No thanks Hafer. Dogs and bacon for life. Actually not bacon because I don't eat animals. But the sentiment is there. Anarahab kelb. I haven't fully renounced it. I still abstain from pork most of the time and I'm trying to get through the Quran but I don't pray or fast during holidays. Reason being that my parents who do practice the religion never taught me how to be Muslim. There are no mosques where I live either so my parents didn't have a place to take me to that could teach me. I'm currently agnostic. Agnostic makes the most sense. Well, something I can actually contribute to. I'm full American, but grew up raised by Muslim converts. And I have a very Muslim name. Sorry my story isn't so interesting, but really I just didn't identify with it. I don't believe in any of it at all, and I find the values involved to be irrelevant and very spiritually and emotionally limiting. Also I find some of the Quran to be violent and even gratuitous. I grew up in a heavily Muslim area, but our house was right on the edge, near the mosque. I was always allowed to go wherever I wanted inside the Muslim part, but never outside. This resulted in me being allowed to go basically as far as I wanted one way, but not even one street the other. Anyway, every time I went to mosque with my family I would smell this absolutely delicious smell coming from over the road, which was outside the Muslim area. But no matter how many times I asked my father to go, he would always tell me to ignore it. When I was 18 I had just attended mosque, and the smell was amazing, so I decided the next day I would go myself and investigate. As I walked into the shop, A tiny owner-run establishment typical in my part of the world. I smelled it and saw a patron walking out with a huge burger smothered in cheese. I pointed to it and asked the owner for one. It arrived. I paid, took a bite and looked up. Kosher pork burgers. Serious. I just slowly grew out of it. I was born in a Muslim country, given a very Muslim name, but my Greek Orthodox mom was Canadian, so I had dual citizenship. I was also blonde, fair-skinned and green-eyed. Parents divorced. I came to Canada with my mom. She remarried to another Muslim. He was a licensed professional and a bit of a tech computer enthusiast. Played piano and liked to paint. So he wasn't really that stereotypical of what you'd think of a devout Muslim. Nonetheless, he was more devout than my biological dad, who never prayed, who was an alcoholic, womanizer, and would loosely observe Western holidays like Christmas. My stepdad was the complete opposite of that, but I didn't live with him right away. Him and my mom took about a year to develop their relationship. So for me, between the divorce and coming to Canada and living with my hermit Greek Orthodox grandmother for a year, I never really kept up with my Arabic and didn't really practice Islam traditionally. Eventually my mom and stepdad married and got a place. My stepdad went to the mosque every week. I would go with him from time to time. He prayed 5 times a day. He invited discussion groups from the mosque along with guest imams cheeks to our house for halakas to discuss politics, social issues and religion. He often had me come to events to meet other Muslims and so I could learn about my religion. I got sent to Saturday schools where we primarily recited Quran. I never really embraced it though, and it was always a source of tension between my stepdad and I. He had anxiety and control issues. He was a bit emotionally manipulative without realizing it. They've since divorced, after 20 years. Anyway, long story short, I went to a Western school, made Western friends, smoked weed, drank while underage, went to parties, lost my virginity outside of marriage, had a girlfriend, broke up, went through a club drug alcohol binge and had a lot of flings and one night stands throughout stands, failed out of college, but going back now. Throughout all that, Islam slowly dematerialized in importance to me. It lost its validity as I began questioning and scrutinizing it more, reading up on atheism and agnosticism online. I don't regret any of my decisions. I feel more at ease with the agnostic atheist mindset. Not me, but a friend of mine is from a Muslim family and he is secretly non-religious. He tells me he doesn't want his family to know and that he never intends to tell them. He says he stopped believing when he was quite young with several reasons behind it. He just simply did not have faith. He disliked many things the religion entailed, for example, going to mosque. He likes things that are considered sinful, for example, eating bacon, and he thinks that in a world where such terrible things happen there couldn't possibly be a god. He actually managed to get out of going to mosque because it turned out one of the priests there was a pedophile and actually abused some children with physical and sexual violence. Even though the priest was arrested, my friend told his mum he was scared that he could have been one of those children that were abused, so she said he can pray at home and only has to go to mosque once a year. Even though he had already secretly renounced his faith when I met him, he'd never eaten bacon. So I introduced him to it, also marijuana. He actually told me once that his parents wouldn't be too bothered if they discovered he smoked marijuana, but that they would either kill or disown him if he was caught eating pork. Raised Muslim. At 13 I told my family I didn't believe in God. My mom wasn't happy but dealt with it. My dad didn't really care as he figured it was a phase. Almost 2 decades later, nobody cares. Not even a little. I'm asked if I go to mosque by some relatives, but that's about as far as pestering goes. I still enjoy a lot of things about Islam. I enjoy the hijab. I think it's gorgeous even if I pretty much never wear it. I love the sound of the call to prayer. I love eat food and still celebrate that. I think a lot of the time people in the West assume that being non-religious in a Muslim family will get you killed. And sure, it can happen. But most ex-Muslims or non-religious raised Muslims have a fine relationship with their parents. It's like, yeah, coming out as gay in America can get you ostracized from your family. Leaving your spouse is the most dangerous time for murder for women in America. But you wouldn't call it the norm or judge an entire group by that narrative. Likewise, it would be a mistake to do so with Muslims. Just as you mention America, it depends which Muslim country you're talking about. I've spoken with a lot of Muslims and they never want to talk in terms of Saudi Arabia or Iran, for example. Ex-Muslim guy here. My parents honestly gave me the option to choose if I wanted to practice or even be Muslim. As a sign of respect to them, I decided to give it a try in my late teen years, and after a lot of inner turmoil, I decided to believe in God but not in the Islamic practice itself or its core. My sister was raised in the same way and has chosen the same path as myself, and my parents could not be more proud and have never pressed the point since our decision was made. My wife is Irish Catholic from Irish country and they have made her and her family incredibly welcome. We were both very lucky to have been raised by great parents. TLDR. I tried to become a better Muslim. The more I studied, the more I questioned. Now I'm free from Islam and its toxic ways. I was raised a Muslim, first generation American. I never questioned Islam until I was a teenager. It was just not something I ever considered. I was pretty devoted and was elected president of my high school's Muslim Student Association. This made me want to become a better Muslim, so I decided to read the whole Quran in English. Well, the more I learned and read, the more the illusion shattered. It was terrible. It was all fear tactics and control. There were so many things that you could go to heck for, and many of them were victimless crimes. My thought process was this: humans have an innate sense of right and wrong. I know when something I'm doing is harmful. Then God gives us a whole other list of things that are wrong. Why would he give us both a sense of morality and a moral guide that conflicts? That's how I freed myself from the idea that I needed religion. I had always been told we needed Islam to know right and wrong. I don't need to blindly trust someone else's ideas of right and wrong because I am capable myself. Next, I stopped believing in heck. Because no one deserves the brutal torture that the Quran describes, especially not for eating pork, enjoying sex, or questioning what they're taught. It's so clearly just to scare people into following the rules. And so, after much debating and really trying to believe, I left Islam. When my family found out I was disowned, I had to leave home and start a new life. People in the community thought I was the devil and were ashamed of me, but I was happy, and I am happy, because it's an amazing feeling to be free. I can wear a sundress on a hot day without the fear of punishment. I can trust my own moral compass, learn and establish my own views on every issue. I am guilt-free now. I understand why people follow Islam and other religions. The way I and many others were raised, it's not even a question. Islam is presented as a truth just like the sky is blue, and the repercussions for leaving are usually severe. Many people find comfort in religion, and as long as they don't do any harm, it doesn't bother me. But I do feel like the secular version of myself is a much better person than Muslim me ever was. Matt Dillahunty also became an atheist through this process. He was a Fundy Baptist and was studying to be a priest and looked at the Bible in detail so that he could defend it against those heathen atheists. The more he read, the more. And now he hosts a weekly public access call-in TV show in Texas called The Atheist Experience. Muslim here, not leaving the religion or anything, but just wanted to give my input. Have been a Muslim for my entire life. Moved to Canada when I was a baby. Studied hard and am now working as an engineer. I wanted to say that contrary to all the I moved to Canada or US and lost my religion, I didn't experience any of that. The majority of my friends are non-Muslim, and I even have some non-religious Muslim friends. I tend to follow a lot of the rules of Islam, but there are some that I don't understand and don't see why we should follow to the exact wording. For example, I don't see why women don't get the same rights as men since we're all human. I feel as that if I wasn't religious, I still wouldn't eat pork or drink alcohol or do drugs, since those things just seem dirty to me. I am nowhere near as religious as people would like me to be, but there are some strict rules that I simply cannot follow, culturally or religiously. X. Not being able to have a girlfriend and having sex before marriage. This is a throwaway account, but I will keep it open for the next few days to answer any questions you guys may have. A bit late but ex-Muslim here. I started questioning it when I was about 14. I couldn't understand why I wasn't allowed to talk to boys, to play basketball, to go swimming. Why all my friends, good loving people, were going to burn in heck for eternity just because they didn't believe in what we did. So I started doing my own research and it just didn't make sense to me. I asked my parents, asked the imams at the local mosque my questions, and their answers to me were because God says so or this is the devil's doing. Just pray and they will go away. This went on for a few years. I didn't want to not believe, not just out of fear that my family will disown me, but I don't want to hurt them. But I completely became atheist when I was 18. My grandfather was very sick, living in Morocco. I live in the UK, so my mother and I flew down to see him. He began to die and instead of calling an ambulance, they all began to pray and just kept saying over and over, it's his time. I'm happy being free from the chains of religion. I never really understood how people felt a sense of comfort from it. I always seen it as do this or you'll burn in heck, so maybe it was the way I was brought up. Right now, I'm studying, so I still live with my parents. I've not come out to them yet, as it were, mostly because I really don't want to hurt them. I know a lot of ex-Muslims that are so much happier not having their family in their lives because their parents weren't the best, and I sometimes wish my family wasn't. It would make my life a lot easier. But my family is lovely, caring and support me, even if they will disown me when the time comes. Was Muslim as a kid. When I reached 15 years old I thought this crap made no sense. I was raised in a Muslim country and went to the mosque every Friday with my dad. Around age 12 we moved to Canada. Around the age of 14-15 I started to get seriously interested in biology and science. I read a lot of books and watched literally everything made by David Attenborough. I also smoked a lot of weed, and this lifestyle contradicted Islam. Anyways, basically Islam no longer made any sense to my more developed brain, so I said frick it, I am an atheist and the story is over. PS. Not saying I was smart in any way. I did a lot of stupid crap. What I mean by more developed brain is the difference between a preteen and a 14-15 year old kid. Finally, this question was made for me. My mom is Irish Catholic, and my biological dad was a Muslim Egyptian immigrant. My siblings and I were white kids who grew up in white suburban New Jersey, but were raised Muslim until my parents divorced when I was 9. I grew up feeling like an outsider. While all my neighbors and friends celebrated Easter and Christmas and hung out at CCD, I was going to mosque, praying 5 times a day, and couldn't eat pork. I have a lot of respect for Islam, and I still feel a connection to it, but I became an atheist almost immediately after my father left. Not because there's anything wrong with Islam, but growing up feeling alienated and misplaced forced me to think way more about religion and faith than any 9-year-old usually would. Not sure if I ever really renounced it. I remember in grade school I would just read novels on top of the Quran to keep my parents off my back. I'd read fake prayers as early as grade 7 so my parents would stop hassling me to pray. I guess there wasn't really a massive step that I took to give it up. Kinda just happened. In my parents' eyes I'm still an unpracticing Muslim. They'll still insist I pray whenever I visit them, and I'll oblige them if only to avoid a conflict. I'm 90% sure my parents know that I don't really care, and I think it's taken them a long time to even acknowledge that their son isn't religious. At the same time they're fervent in their belief that one day I'll return to the fold. Well crap, I'm late, to be honest. I wanted to drink booze and eat pork. My philosophy of life is do whatever you want unless it hurts someone. I wanted to do whatever I wanted. The problem with Islam is that there's a very big conservative point of view with people. And what really pee me off is that Muslims should have been denouncing extremism much louder. Like leader of Muslim countries should be doing speeches on how terrible these people are. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.